All right, cool. We are live. Good day, my crypto friends. It's a pleasure to see you today. We're back here on the EOS podcast, and today we have Yves LaRose from EOS Nation, and he's going to tell us all about what EOS Nation's adding to the community as a block producer and what's new and interesting in EOS in general. So welcome to the show, Yves. How you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thank you very much, Brandon, for inviting me on. This is a pleasure. I've been watching your show, so it's really cool to finally be on.
Cool, man. Well, appreciate you being here. Why don't you introduce yourself and EOS Nation and kind of just an overview of what you guys are up to.
Sounds good. EOS Nation is a group of 7 co-founders. We started in the EOS space roughly in, I guess, July of 2017. So we've been around for quite some time. We had a Facebook group going. A couple of our founders started a Facebook group. It became the largest Facebook group quite quickly in terms of community participation. And over time, the rest of us kind of came on and we decided to form this group because we had shared values and a shared kind of goal in what we wanted to see for EOS. We all come from different walks of life, different backgrounds in terms of professions. We've got engineers, developers, we've got a professional poker player, old poker player on the team, government, academics, architects, educators. So we thought that kind of our blended and mix of backgrounds and professional skills would be really suited to launching, I guess, ourselves into this journey. So last March, or I guess February 2018, we decided to formally announce our candidacy as block producers. And we've been in this journey together now for the last 7 months or so. 6 of us are in Eastern Canada. So we're in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Sherbrooke. And then we've got one of our co-founders who's in the United States, down in Texas. And we kind of started this idea of being a DAC because we're all in different locations. And I tell this story quite a bit. I just came back from London last night. And the idea was we were going to be a DAC at first because we're all remote and I've never met our co-founder that's down in Texas. Mm-hmm. The idea was that we were going to launch as a DAC and we were going to try to figure this out similar to what EOS DAC did. And we pushed that idea for a while until we really realized that that's not really what we wanted to do. But we wanted to keep the decentralized aspect to EOS Nation. And that's where the name comes from as well. So we launched our ambassador program. So even though we are 7 co-founders that kind of determine the direction of where EOS Nation is heading, we also have quite a large network of ambassadors. I think we're up to 15 or 16 right now. It changes because it fluctuates. And so we have ambassadors throughout the world. So
I saw your ambassador program. It's killer. And I want to get into that. I want to jump you back to a point that you said there about the difference between a DAC and the kind of the direction you guys decided to take. Can you talk a little bit about like the thought process or what that decision was, why it's better, or what you're able to do with how it is?
I don't think one's better than the other. I guess the major stopping point was the legal aspects of if we're going to be setting up a DAC, how would that work? And from a legal perspective, we encountered challenges early on, and we tried to push the envelope. We also tried to push how would we incentivize the community to be able to participate in the DAC so that they could determine who would be sitting as custodians and who would be part of kind of the core team. EOS DAC ended up doing it through their EOS DAC tokens. And it turns out that from the legal aspect, it's much simpler than where we were heading, kind of the thought process and where we were at when we were doing that. I don't even think they have any legal entity. And that was, I think they also pushed it. They had a bunch of different models. And in the end, I'm fairly certain, don't quote me on it, but I think that they don't even have a legal entity set up. And that's how it ended up working out for them. So we kind of stopped at that time. But the idea was that we really wanted to get that decentralized kind of entity still going. So that still remained at the core of our values. Because we really wanted to know, we really wanted different opinions and different directions from different places in the world because we stem from that Facebook group, we had people from all over. So having a bunch of guys from this very similar region in the world would not necessarily give us the global mindset that we were looking for in terms of what we could do as a block producer.
Yeah, and that's where you were talking about the ambassador program, which I saw. Yeah. I think you guys are EOS. Man, you just had a tweet about one of your ambassador programs out there.
In Nigeria, we just had a hub.
That's what it was. Yeah. It was Nigeria. Yeah. So what's your connection with EOS Nigeria, and how's your ambassador program work out there?
So when we first started the ambassador program, very quickly on, we were inundated with requests to participate. And the idea was really simple. If you were already in EOS, if you already had knowledge and you're already kind of doing meetups in your own jurisdictions, and you're interested in participating, learning more, and being able to contribute to a larger network, apply to be an ambassador. And so it really started off as simple as that. And one thing led to the next. We got a bunch of ambassadors come from Nigeria, and their big thing was they were current Steemit ambassadors, and they just want to promote blockchain in their local regions, right? And so we had, and we still do, so 4 of our ambassadors are in Nigeria. And for them, the reality of what blockchain could do and how it could change their life is very, very different than, I guess, what ambassadors in different parts of the world were telling us. So for them, a big part of it was being unbanked. Big part of it was everything is on mobile phones. The infrastructure is very different. Government corruption is widespread. Inequalities between, or the dispersion and inequalities between rich and poor. So just they had so many different challenges and or opportunities stemming from crypto that they wanted to try and expand on that as much as possible. And they saw EOS as a way, because it was feeless and transactions are really, really quick, to be able to leverage the blockchain, to be able to elaborate on certain parts of their lives that they saw perhaps were lacking. And so we started that program with them. So it's not necessarily with EOS Nigeria at first, although we just did something with them. So we just launched a blockchain hub. Super simple. We have a bunch of people that we rented a hub, an actual location, set up the air conditioner there. We've got internet going on. There's desks, and it's kind of like a classroom environment. And people come, and they were doing a week-long course where they learn how to develop, they learn how to use the blockchain, from very, very basic concepts to how to use a computer for some people, to how to get onto the internet, to what is blockchain, to then finally being able to transact on a blockchain, setting up an account on EOS, being able to use the function in EOS. So throughout that week, until even they were able to code smart contracts. So it's kind of going from A to Z, and we were piloting that project. And that just launched on September 22nd. So that's one of the things that we've done through our ambassador program.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's huge. And crypto or blockchain is so, we think about all the opportunity in the United States or in Canada and in these places, but the opportunity is so much different. Sometimes we forget that this opportunity is like a chance at livelihood or freedom or overcoming these real basic needs, like or advantages people have, like some sort of bank, like being able to hold their own money securely and not have it corrupted. So that's huge, that how you're operating in other countries like that with your ambassador program. What is there any other things, or how are they kind of using it, like boots on the ground type of use of EOS in somewhere like Nigeria? Are they using it as a currency as well, or?
Yeah, so they're using it as a currency. Just to give you an idea, when one of our ambassadors joined, we asked them to, so they always submitted like a text. Why do you want to be an ambassador? What does that mean to you? And how do you think you could contribute to the system? And what have you done so far to be able to have experience to be able to teach this in your local jurisdiction? And one of the first ambassadors from Nigeria told us that for him, it was completely life-changing. He was an educator prior to, and he was making a salary and whatever, and he was creating a lot of content, but that content never belonged to him. So it always belonged to the institution that he was working for, and he was getting paid, a small salary, but it was really difficult to make a living. And And along came Steemit. So for him, it was Dan Larimer's vision. Steemit came along, and he started being able to write articles on Steemit, share them throughout, and a couple of large Steemit holders took notice of his articles and kind of the content that he was sharing and how valuable that content was, and he started getting upvotes. And in a very short period of time, building a network. So his skill definitely is being a network builder. So this guy just knows everybody and anybody. He's got so many contacts, and over a very quick period of time, because of Steemit, he was able to leave his previous job, create educational content for people, whatever that may be, and actually get paid for it without having a middleman. And he was saying that, where he lives in that particular part of Nigeria, a weekly kind of cost for somebody to live was around $20 US per week. And he was able to achieve that very quickly through Steem. So for him, he was able to free himself, spend more time going back to studies, be able to learn, at the same time creating content in his field of study, getting paid for that. But again, Steemit had its challenges because of the way that it's currently set up, the transaction times, but more so for him, what it was is the proof of stake system in Steemit. Slowly it was becoming more and more concentrated in certain people, so he was losing his possibility of livelihood. And he saw EOS as a means to potentially create Steemit 2.0 and eventually continue doing that, but on a faster feeless network. And so he wanted to, as much as possible, evangelize and do his part in getting more and more people to come on to EOS to be able to eventually build those systems so that he could continue doing his thing.
Yeah, I like to think about, and I bring this up, I've brought it up a couple times, but there's this unlocking of talent that is so amazing, that something like Steemit, which you find this way to all of a sudden have $20 a week, which is attainable on Steemit, and all of a sudden this entire person's talent is unlocked for the entire world.
Oh, that's crazy.
At $20 a week, you're unlocking this huge potential. It's like, how many of those can we get? How many people can we reach out to? And at some point, when do we unlock like entire nations worth of talent and free them up from, basically, you think of our minds like some sort of computing power, some sort of resource. And so much of it is currently locked into people surviving. And as we unlock that, like there could be some huge changes, especially from these cultures who approach the world differently than, and have these whole different approaches. I mean, I really feel like as we unlock this talent, the world is going to shift in a really beautiful way, possibly.
I think so too.
Excited, yeah.
And for him, like he's mentioned on multiple occasions how this has changed his life. And what it does for us as well is another concrete example. When the RAM fees were quite high, I was talking to some people who, for example, are in Europe, and they were saying, $20 to create an account, it's expensive, but it's not that bad considering the value that you get. And at the same time, I'm talking to our ambassadors in Nigeria, and they're saying $20, that feeds me and my family for the whole week. Like, this is not sustainable. I can't do this. You're pricing out of this market. So what it does is it shifted, it ensured that EOS Nation has kind of a global perspective on who feels what based on what's going on in the ecosystem. And it really helps us shift our direction and to align with our values. And so we did a really, really hard push to try and do what we could to lower those RAM fees so that it would make it so, again, that people didn't have to pay what we think might not be that large of fees, but for them are quite high considering, right? So that global perspective, we definitely get from our ambassador program.
Yeah, and it's
incredibly humbling. Like to hear somebody say that you've changed their lives because you've done X or Y and you're at the other end of the world, and it's amazing. Like, this is what it's all about for me.
For sure. I mean, all of a sudden there's this chance to actually change lives in other places or help or feel like you are doing some sort of good that's tangible, because in the past it's like, okay, 1 week out of the year, I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to help like install a well or something. But like, but how many people actually do that? It's like, this opens up the ability to help on a real level in a direct way to so many people on the other side of it as well. I mean, it's
on a global scale. Like
so
this,
cool.
I think the stats of unbanked are ridiculously high, right? Compared, if you look at developing countries compared to I guess where I'm from in Canada, like this is not something that we think about. And for a majority of the part of the world, it is life changing. It literally is life changing.
Yeah.
Because it no longer goes through the governments that we have at play that kind of control and this game and control the currencies. So
yeah, it's becoming it's definitely giving a global perspective, and that's something for me that being in the States, it's hard to continually remind yourself like that I'm part of a global community, but EOS has done so much for me in that way, because now I have friends in Africa and China and Europe and India and South America, all over the place. So, it's like all of a sudden I actually have all these global friendships. So now like that leap is no longer that hard for me to make. Like I actually feel like a global resident inside myself as before I had to kind of like try to like conceptualize what that was like. So it's kind of a cool thing that I hadn't thought about that EOS just brings is a mental shift for people as well. Like in EOS Nation is a great example. Like you guys that's what you're building that's
what we're trying,
this mental model.
Yeah, that global community. Like I often say that I think that one of the largest assets that EOS has and that EOS is built on is its community. The community is just amazing. I've been in the crypto space since 2010. I started off as a Bitcoin miner, and that's a long time ago. But started off as a crypto Bitcoin miner, and for me, what I've seen happen over time is really what do you call that? Like a siloing of different communities throughout the world. So they start off really close, and eventually they kind of go their separate ways. And I see that EOS right now has this incredible community. And so what EOS Nation does as much as possible is we try to keep creating those links between communities throughout the world so that in my opinion, our greatest asset keeps thriving. So not only just survives, but thrives, and that we can bring that so that when we do have mass adoption and when we have the amount of DApps that are coming on chain, and that we're going to start seeing all this ecosystem grow and be utilized, that we continue having this global community so that we don't build walls, but we build bridges between our different communities, either through breaking down language barriers or cultural barriers. But definitely that's what EOS Nation is all about.
Yeah, and you guys are on top of this like real core of community building, you guys are also very transparent as well. What's your take kind of on transparency and the importance of that with block producers?
I'm not here to dictate what other block producers can and should do, but from very early on, it was one of our values. We said that there was this concept of radical transparency, radical financial transparency.
Yeah.
And so from the very beginning, we, our public identities are known, and you know who I am. You called me by name at first. People know where I live. Like I'm now a public figure, but that's a luxury that I have that not everybody has. So if you're in different parts of the world, you might not be able to do that, right? So I kind of have this personal security in the sense that I don't have to worry as much about being a public figure, but that's not the case for everybody. And so what we do and how we've set up things, especially from the financial point of view, because it's on the blockchain, everybody can go and check out our accounts from the very beginning. So it starts off when we get our block producer rewards or standby block producer rewards. It's in EOS Nation for the wins, or a block producer account name. And it goes from there. And you can see it going from expenses to, let's say, our Chinese account, and then for the employees there, budget, our salaries, that kind of stuff. And then it goes to the founders. So you can see when we track expenses, we use the memo field all the time. And you can kind of see this tree going of our complete financial structure, and everything as much as possible is done in a way to facilitate so that everybody can keep going down. And there are tools out there that even make it even easier so that you can visualize it. But that was something that was really important for us, was that transparency of decision making, that financial transparency, accountability for our actions, integrity with the actions that we were doing as well, and kind of that whole wrapped around in professionalism. For us, that at the core, again, that transparency was super important so that people knew who they were voting for and they continuously know who they're voting for. And we try as much as possible to be approachable so that we travel quite a bit and we're out in the communities as much as possible. So one of the things, transparency as well, EOS Nation has done, probably wrong on the number here a little bit, but let's say 43 or 44 different, hosted different meetings across the world. So we not only are transparent on our social media, either it's from, in Medium or in Telegram or Steemit or Facebook or whatever, but we're also in person more often than not attending meetups and hosting our own meetups throughout the world so that people can really connect with us on a human level, not only on the computer, but face to face, because that's part of that transparency as well that we want to share with people, is who we are as human beings.
I think that's one of my favorite like kind of core values as far as the core value goes that I look for in block producers. And I think the radical financial transparency, as you put it, is pretty big, because it's hard to transparency in general, just like you being open and talking, there's still some wiggle room there, but numbers are just so, that's just numbers.
Numbers can't really lie.
Yeah, and
especially on a blockchain. Like
exactly.
It's what it is, right?
And so that form of like numbers on a blockchain type of transparency is like, yeah, that's, I appreciate that a lot as a token holder. And a shout out to Crypto Lions, who also does some good transparency, like I think monthly reporting with their numbers.
Awesome for that.
Yeah, and so I always, give shout out. So I'll start giving shout out to you guys too. For
awesome.
That. I think that's cool. Yeah. And
a little anecdote on that, Brandon. So if you go through all our finances, there's one transfer that had to be sent to an exchange, and we hated it. So the way, because when you send to an exchange, you can't put a memo. You have to put the memo that they tell you to put. Your account number, right? Mm-hmm. But we were sponsoring an event. I don't remember. I think it was the Wyoming Hackathon.
Oh yeah.
And for tax purposes, they needed to receive cash, so we needed to exchange the fiat into cash. The EOS into fiat. And so we had to send it to an exchange. So we have one transaction that's lost in the system. So what we did is we sent it to an expense account prior to, said that we would be sending it to an exchange with the memo field, then sent it to the exchange so that it matches. But that one transaction bothered us for the longest time. But it's that kind of thing where when you go in this route and when you decide that this is going to be a core value, you have to stick with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's so incredibly important. Whatever your values are as a block producer, being reliable and being consistent, I think is the most important thing. And I think that that's what we see in the ecosystem. Like you were saying, Crypto Lions, when you start reporting and you start, dealing with the community and offering a service in a way, to keep doing it is part of that transparency. But it's so incredibly important, because if you just do it once, it doesn't have as much value, right? So you got to keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the longer you keep it up, the longer, this longer example that's been set of that it can be done, and it doesn't hurt your company, as long as you're in a, somewhere like you said, that's, let's say, safe to be transparent with your resources. So that's something to take into account, of course. But yeah, there's some out there who talk about, maybe a quarterly or every 6 month reporting, and then setting goals for the future, more like, like the standard financial system does it. So there's these other takes out there, but I haven't heard any compelling enough arguments personally for me to kind of shift my personal take is that I like what you guys are doing. So that's
awesome.
Yeah. So that's cool, man.
We'll keep doing it for sure.
Yeah. Keep it up. What else you guys up to as far as just EOS Nation specific? You got the ambassador program. And what other kind of things you guys into?
So right now, I just came back from London. So one of the things, I was at the hackathon for the last week. We participated in a couple of events. the blockchain live and everything. And one of the things that we've been working on, I guess twofold. So one, we want to keep growing our ambassador network. So if anybody's listening and you want to apply to be an ambassador, maybe at the end we could put a link or something like that. But
what do you look for? What do you look for specifically in ambassadors? Like, is it a broad or narrow kind of focus?
More and more, we're trying to look at, and this links to what we're working on next. But more and more, what we're trying to do is find ambassadors with specific skill sets for their particular regions. And what I mean by that is, for example, I just came back from London. We met our ambassador that's there in London, Wayne. So shout out to Wayne. And he is in the finance industry, and he was in the finance industry prior to becoming an ambassador. So what he can contribute as an ambassador, being in the center of London and being in that, that economic powerhouse in the world, part of it is that. And so what we're looking for in ambassadors are not only, a dedication to EOS and having that knowledge and wanting to be sharing that knowledge with people, but it's also having other skill sets that can be used and leveraged to be able to grow the ecosystem. So whether you're a developer and you want to be put in touch with people and you want to, start coding some stuff on the side, and you want to have access to our CTO who can help out with some smart contracts, that type of thing, that's something that we're looking for. We're looking for other people in the finance industry, because one of the projects that we're working on is we have a small fund that we set up, a community engagement fund, and we want to be able to grow that model because it's been very, very successful. And one of the things that I've personally done in my trips out to China, I've been out to China 52 days in the last 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that I've done a lot in China is met people with access to VC funds or VC funds themselves. And they want to be paired with good developers and with really good ideas out in the West. And they just don't have that contact to make kind of that link. And so what we're working on is a project where we would essentially kind of, the projects would go through us, because a lot of projects talk to us all the time. They approach us and they say, listen, EOS Nation, do you have access potentially to funds? And they want to access our community engagement funds, but they're simply not large enough. We're not a VC fund. But if we apply that process and we apply the algorithms and we apply the due diligence to those processes, and then we're able to act as a filter for VCs, we can considerably reduce the amount of projects that get passed along their way. And if we're able to do that effectively, then we're able to match up and pair up funding with ideas more effectively, and we're able to grow the ecosystem. So we ourselves wouldn't be a DApp incubator or a VC fund, but we would pair both of them together to be able to add that value to the ecosystem because of the unique position that we're in and the amount of networking contacts that we have throughout the world.
That makes a lot of sense, because especially VC funds, they want to get into blockchain, but they don't necessarily have the expertise to vet these projects. And then on top of that, if they put themselves out there looking for blockchain projects, now they've got 1,000 projects to vet. So, as a kind of an expert, and then being able to pass on good ones. On that note, what do you think? What's a good DApp look like? What's like from your point of view, like someone's got a startup, and what are maybe a few key points that you look for them to have done?
Well, if I look at, that's difficult, right? Because if I knew kind of the magic recipe, I don't think anybody knows the magic recipe, but what I can tell from what's been going on lately, what seems to be popular are all these little games that gain a lot of attraction because how simple they are and how much creativity they're able to let you incorporate in them. And there seems to be a trend as well, that's something where there's financial gambling in it or there's incentive. So in the short term, it seems to be like those are getting a lot of traction. One good one that we were talking about was the EOS Pixel, the Pixel Master, right? Mm-hmm. So it lets you unleash your creativity by being able to draw images on this wall, basically on this 1,000 by 1,000 pixel wall. But then it also brings in that competitive aspect where I can come and draw over your pixels and then try to take over that space, that real kind of space that exists there on the blockchain. And then you're able to start kind of this competition going on as well as these financial incentives. And we've seen that those types of things are right now thriving because EOS can handle it. And the amount of volume that's there right now is incredible. I was looking at pixels earlier, and in a span of 2 hours, they increased by something like 20,000 EOS, which at the time was about 20%. So it just shows how much people are going in and doing their thing. And you see, people write whatever a message, somebody writes over it, and they come back and they write over it. So you've got all these little things going on. Another thing that I saw while I was in London, which was really cool, is if we look at gamers, so I think that the gaming industry is going to be radically changed by blockchain, in particular EOS. I myself was a gamer a while back, and I think that gaming is one of the industries where I think we're going to see the fastest growth and the largest amount of adoption in the quickest amount of time. One of the games that I saw, I don't know exactly what the game was, but you've got a character, and basically the concept of, if people are watching you play on Twitch right now, they're sending you money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're giving donations, and you're live streaming your gameplay, whatever. Well, you add something on there with EOS in the game that I saw. So you get this character, and this character's somewhere in the game where now there's a challenge, and maybe your character's not strong enough. And me, instead of just being able to send you some funds because I like what you're doing and I enjoy watching you play, I also perhaps can buy in-game items. And the one that I saw, like, this guy buys a flaming sword or whatever, and the guy that's playing is now in front of a boss and he's not strong enough, and I can send him my flaming sword so that he can use it for the next 5 minutes. And so, like, I'm clicking on my thing, he gets the sword because it's real time, because it runs on EOS. And now I'm able to interact with this person and actually connect with people playing games on a different level that I was able to prior to by just sending them tokens and maybe writing messages. Now I can actually participate in game with them with items and that kind of stuff. So this kind of stuff excites me the most right now.
Yeah.
Because I think that kind of participation where you connect human beings together is limitless in terms of ideas. Like, it's just, people just need to think of more ways to do it, but that's where it's at right now.
That gaming aspect, that bridges a huge gap there that maybe some people don't realize. If you haven't been on Twitch, I went on a few months ago just to see what is this and why is this so popular? I was like, what is going on? And so I went and checked it out, and it's so engaging. It's so much more engaging than you'd think. You'd think, okay, I'm going to go watch someone else play a video game. That sounds like a horrible idea. Like, I like playing video games, so I don't want to watch some other person do it. But you go in and you find these really engaging people. They're playing, they're talking to you while they play.
Yeah.
And then the craziest thing for me was that so many people that are watching, so many of the viewers are just sending money, and the money like drops from the top of the screen like into a bucket, and the guy playing like can kind of see money dropping, like little tips. And the point is that, like, people are dropping, these people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which blows your minds, out of tips in playing video games.
Yeah.
And the people that are giving the tips, this is the point, the people that are giving the tips are doing it just out of part appreciation and part like kind of notice me, notice my comment type of thing.
Yeah, there's part of that.
And it's like $5 to $10, like just all the time, just as like, thanks, and notice my comment. And they're doing it for such a small amount of engagement. Now, if they were able to like be a part of the game and then support this person by giving them an item, the amount of engagement, I'm saying it would like double, triple, quadruple.
That's
like,
crazy. As humans, we're social creatures, and we want to interact with one another. We want to connect with one another. So going back to your question, what do you think is like a DApp or anything that'll help? Any application, I think, that will help connect people on a level that we haven't seen before, using the blockchain, where you have more control over your information and on how perhaps the transactions occur. I think that's right now one of the hottest things. And that was the part, I guess, in a way, that was the challenge for the hackathon. It was all about identity and privacy. So if you're able to do this in a way that you can control your identity and control your privacy, because right now that identity and that privacy is being outsourced to third parties, and you need to trust them. But through blockchain technology, you no longer have to trust a third party. And so that's where it's all about. And I think that that's where we're going to see so much growth. I think that part, like you were saying in Twitch, I would imagine that if you can connect with people more, if you can interact with them more, and if you can secure their privacy more, you're going to bring this to a whole new level, like something that we just have not seen at this point.
Yeah, and can you remind people, because I'm sure everyone's wondering, what's the name of that DApp? What's the video game DApp called?
I think it was something like, oh man, they were handing out swords on top of it. It was this Minecraft style sword, so it was just pixelated. I'll have to look into it. I'll look into it, and then I'll send you a message after, and perhaps you can link it below.
Here, we got it. BitJoy.
BitJoy. There you go. Yes. That's exactly it. BitJoy.
I know that people listening are like, no, we want it now, please. Yeah.
It was amazing. It was really cool.
Yeah. BitJoy. Yeah. Really cool project. Yeah. And the other thing that you're talking about was Pixel.io. Can you explain to me a little bit how Pixel works? Like what the game theory behind it is, or just like what the gameplay is?
Sure. You start off with I guess when Pixel Master, so it's pixelmaster.io, I think.
Oh, Pixel Master.
So when it first started off, it's this blank canvas of 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels wide by 1,000 pixels high. And it's all blank. And you can go one by one and purchase and draw on each individual pixel. Now, if the pixel has never been drawn on before, so if it's the original untouched pixel from when the game launched, I think the pixel goes for 0.05 EOS. And you draw on there and you draw a color and you've got your palette, so you've got a choice of colors, whatever. And people started drawing out, logos and words and pictures or whatever. And the way it works is that all that EOS goes into a pool, and then and then that pool grows over time, and the people that have bought pixels after you, then that pool keeps on going. And if you've bought pixels, I think you get a like dividends based on how many pixels you've bought, how many pixels you own, and how many pixels then are now bought after you if they haven't drawn on you. So I haven't even talked about the drawing over you aspect. But then you get some dividends from that. So on how many pixels you currently hold based on how much money is being put in the system. Now, if people draw over your pixel, they have to pay a premium for your pixel. So you started off at 0.05. I believe the next cost, so if you're drawing over a pixel that's only been drawn over once, I think it's 35% higher. So it's 0.675. And then it goes to 0.911. And then the price of pixel keeps increasing in terms of how many times it's been drawn over and over and over. So if you go look at the middle pixel, so pixel 500 by 500 right now, I think it's going for something like 4,400 EOS.
Oh, fantastic.
And the next person who draws over it will pay that 4,400. And if you're the one that got drawn over, you get profit. Mm-hmm. You get like a certain percentage of what that price difference is. And so now people are in, so our CTO was talking with Dan Larimer about this, and Dan was going crazy. He loves the pixel game. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how these economic models and these incentives are changing EOS. And he was showing them how perhaps you could even add features where if you could draw complementary colors one beside another, maybe that it could increase the cost of the pixel or the price that you get or whatever. But it's that type of thing where you keep drawing over somebody else, and every time you get a profit of the price difference between the two. And you can even heat map it, and you can see which pixels are more popular than others. So you get the corners, you get the middle, and then that middle is now growing. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Are you buying multiple pixels to form a picture?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha, yeah.
So some people are putting their pixels in like picture generators, and so that they can copy paste so that they don't have to draw one by one. But you could, you can zoom in and really draw one pixel at a time. Oh man, that's great. That's great. What other DApps did they have at the that stuck out to you at the EOS Hackathon? So EOSfinex. Super cool. So Bitfinex is coming out with their exchange, EOSfinex, centralized exchange, and that part's cool. And I think that everybody knew about that part. But the coolest part, in my opinion, is that they're coming with an equivalent of USDT, but it's an EOS stable coin And so I think people need to be on the watch out for that. I think that's going to be a game changer, and I think that we're going to see a lot come out when EOSfinex is launched, and that stablecoin tethered to EOS is launched. All this ecosystem is going to be one of the biggest game changers we've seen so far in EOS. So that was incredibly interesting.
Do you have an understanding of how they're going to make the coin stable?
So yes, we do, because we asked them. So I spent an afternoon with Paolo from Bitfinex.
Yeah.
We had an unconference before Blockchain Live, and Paolo was there. We had a governance room, and we were talking about this. And it seems like they have an enormous amount of EOS from token holders that's in their exchange, but that they've seen through algorithms and through time that is never really touched. So it's never really moving. So they have access to something like 40 million or so EOS tokens that are relatively stable, that provides the liquidity for them doing a bunch of actions on chain. And so it seems as though, if I'm not mistaken, that part of that would be used to create that stable. They just have access to so many resources that are continuously there. So even though people change, people buy, people sell, there's money coming in and out of the system, there's that roughly 37 to 39, I think, million EOS that seems to remain stable. And that's where they're going to provide that liquidity and that stability.
And is it going to be like USD Tether, where, I mean, they're trying to make it stable at the equivalent of a US dollar? I mean,
and not exactly. I think it's going to be linked to something like that. Yes. However, I'm not too sure. Okay. So they just introduced this. I didn't go into super details with them. I just thought that the idea is amazing. You're going to have different EOS pairings, which is great. And it's you won't need to leave the system to be able to basically have that tethered account, right? So instead of going to EOSfinex, trading your tokens on EOSfinex, taking it out of the EOSfinex, putting it on Bitfinex, and then buying USD Tether, you'll just be able to stay in EOSfinex and have that tether directly in EOSfinex.
And also within EOSfinex, still holding the keys to your tokens.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's basically, you could picture it as if, like, say you have like a Ledger Nano or something, and all of a sudden you can do all of your trading and all the exchange operations, but leave
directly on it. Yeah.
Leave it on your Nano. It's like, that is a wonderful game changer.
I think it's a game changer. So for sure, that was exciting. Yeah. There was also Eva Co-op. So have you heard of them?
I have. Yeah.
So they're founders based in Montreal. They're now all over the world. So the people that I met the original founder that's in Montreal. There was a guy there from New York. And so they're trying to grow this ride sharing network similar to Uber and Lyft, but with much, much, much lower fees, and giving dividends back to the drivers, and also being adaptable to specific jurisdictions. So in your jurisdiction, like if we look at how Uber came in, and I know that in Ottawa, it was a big deal when Uber came in, because we had a system in place for taxis, and it really, really shifted the ecosystem, and it put people out of jobs, and it really kind of undercut the market and was playing Uber was playing on a different field, a different set of rules than the current traditional taxi market. And the idea with Eva is that you're able to use their platforms to adapt it to your particular jurisdiction, so that the current taxi businesses that are in that particular jurisdiction can use that application, not get priced out. They still get a portion of funds, potentially more than they were currently getting. And the drivers get to get more from what they were getting. And they're even, they even have a feature where if you're a driver, you're able to set a certain amount of your income that goes directly in a savings account. So let's say you, instead of 100% that goes into fiat, 10% goes into buying back tokens in the network that could potentially grow as an asset. 90% goes to fiat to pay your daily expenses, that type of thing. But all of that built in, and you're able to modify it as you go along without having a third party. So Uber apparently currently takes 25% of all rides and all wages, and their Again, I might be wrong in this number, but I think it's something closer with them to 8 to 10%. So it's a game changer for people. People will be able to have the same level of service that they currently have with Uber and Lyft for a cheaper price, all while the drivers and the companies are able to keep making a good living.
Yeah, that's a cool. That's a really big one.
And it's all based on EOS. So
Yeah.
it's fast, it's instant. And the idea was that the application itself, again, super cool. You have no idea it's running on EOS.
Oh,
so going back to what's going to be like the killer DApps and whatever, it's going to be applications where people have no idea around the blockchain because it makes no difference.
Yeah.
My mom does not need to know how the blockchain works for her to be able to use an app. And if it's running on the blockchain in the background, that's where we're going to get tons of people come on and use EOS without knowing necessarily how it works because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And we should give a shout out to the other DApp I heard mentioned, Emanate, the music DApp.
Emanate, Sean. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Can you give a quick overview of that one?
I can't give a quick overview because I don't understand it very well. However, from what I hear and what I understand, they will be connecting different stakeholders in the industry and curating music specifically for you based on, I think, like the curators and how they set up their thing, how they set up kind of their network. So you're going to get, let's say, producers, and I don't know all the terms for the different people in the industry, but all the stakeholders in the industry are going to be curating music specifically for you. And then your music list will grow and your playlist will grow based on kind of what's going on. So similar to what we see right now with Google Play and that type of thing, but in a very decentralized fashion with different stakeholders in the industry. I hope I didn't botch it, Sean. I'm sorry.
It's all good. At least, Emanate, I got to go check into that one a little bit more because
Awesome.
I haven't done quite enough research myself, but yeah, that's kind of a cool one for sure.
I know that our ambassador, our now regional director, who started off as our ambassador in China, Martin, he's a German expat living in China. He loves Emanate, and so he's been working with them to try and grow that and give them access to the German and the Chinese music space because he loves that application and he just loves the concept. So big shout out to Emanate. I know that what they're doing, although I can't explain it because it's not my thing. Martin can go on and on and on about it, and he loves it.
Crypto people love to do their own research, though. So it's
exactly.
You're just giving them what they want. So go research yourself.
But check it out. From what I heard, like it's amazing. And Sean, super cool guy. I met him for the first time when I was in Seoul, and we went out together a couple of nights. We went out for dinner, and we just kind of, talked about who we are, just like what you and I are doing. You get to know people as human beings. And you get to see like there's just so many good people in this space. It goes back to the greatest asset, I think, of this community is the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what you guys are all about, building this kind of global community. So yeah, that's really cool. And are you doing work with the worker proposal system, or is that something that you guys are involved with, or just something that you're knowledgeable about?
A little bit of both. So when the worker proposal system, the concept came out months ago, when we shifted, I think it was about 3 weeks prior to launch, we revised the final BP incentive, not formula, but I guess mechanism. And the idea was that we would get this, what we have right now, where 1% of inflation would go to block producer rewards and 4% would go to this worker proposal system that we really didn't know nothing about and how we would do that and everything. So very early on, I started participating in discussions to see where that would go, how we could do this, what would such a system look like and everything. But I stayed hands off quite a bit because I was working more so on the referendum tool side. And but I've always kept abreast. And so the work that we're doing currently on that, I just came out with a video series where I interviewed the different worker proposal system proposers, if that makes sense. So the people that just put in their proposals for the very first time for the emergency funds, I just did one-on-one videos about an hour each with them to kind of understand and go through the budgets, the proposals themselves, and what it is they're trying to achieve with them. So I'm very familiar and intimate with what is being proposed, and then who's proposing them and kind of where that thought process came about. I've definitely been a part of those, reading the discussions, not as much participating in them.
So what's your take on the kind of the counterpoint? Because there's people out there saying we should burn these funds. Things are getting done anyway. What's your take on that?
So I think it's important to note that even the worker proposal folks right now, they are intending on burning most of them. So that's part of the proposal. So part of the proposal of what they're saying they want to do is 4% is too much. We should not have that many funds accessible because it's an attack vector regardless. Like to have this EOSIO.savings account that's got, I think, maybe 11 million EOS or whatever at this point, is a potential attack vector. And if that were to be somehow siphoned or hacked or whatever, that would be really, really bad for EOS as an ecosystem. So what they're proposing is taking 1 million EOS out of that and burning the rest. So right away, you would get rid of roughly 92% of what's in there right now. They would be left with 1 million tokens. Of that million, they would be managing it. Of that million, I believe the proposals, if you add all of them up together, comes to about 300, it's a little off, but let's say 350,000 EOS tokens, depending on the price and whatever, because it's pegged to fiat. But let's say we say 350,000 or so. Then if those particular proposals are approved by referendum, they would allocate those. And then depending on what happens after, they might even burn the remaining 650. So even the EOS, the worker proposal people are themselves saying this is too much, let's burn more. So I'm particularly in favor of burning quite a bit. I think that there's too much right now. But at the same time, I do want to try, and it's not necessarily with those proposals, but I do want to try to give access to some funds to people who have demonstrated they're able to grow the EOS ecosystem. Now, why give them funds if they've already shown that they can do it? If I take our example in terms of the referendum proposal, we've been working on this for 2.5 months. We don't get any compensation for this. The referendum forum is now being worked on by, let's say, 7 or 8 teams. If we're going to keep doing this for a long time, some projects are way more complicated than that in terms of tech specs and in terms of development and everything. It's somewhat not realistic to ask, a group of 10 developers to not get paid for a full year, but develop this pro bono. If we want to have core items being built on EOS that benefit the whole community, so if the whole basis and premise behind this is that these funds would go to projects that benefit the whole community, but that have no financial incentives behind them, so they're not for a third party, they're not for profit, that kind of thing, who else is able to dedicate that amount of resource and time? Right now, we're seeing that the only people doing it are the block producers and or the people that have been part of this community for a while. In the long term, those funds might not be needed because you're going to have so many actors that can code on EOS and that, have dev shops that are now, fully functional and they've made money off of other applications and, they have a system going on that is now financially lucrative. In the long term, I think that we might get away with that. In the short term and medium term for crypto, right now we just don't have enough people. We don't have enough people that can actually do this. And we have a huge need for certain things to be built, like the referendum system, because that's the premise that'll take us to kind of where we want to go next to be able to give a voice to the community. So that type of thing right now, like even having a portal that we could propose ideas, those types of things right now, we just don't have the resources to be able to do it in terms of people who have the time and who have the finances other than the block producers. And so right now we're seeing that the people applying for this, most of them are either from the community or they're block producers. And the people that are developing on EOS right now, they are for profit. Most of them anyways, like they have financial incentives somewhere else. And what they're building is not necessarily for the community itself. It's their own game or it's their own application or whatever. It's for their systems. So I don't know if that answers. I think in the short term, yes, let's maybe try to give some funds to some people. In the long term, I'm not sure that's needed. And regardless, I think that 4%, in my opinion, is too much.
Are they looking at lowering the percentage as well, like burning it on the front end and then lowering that percentage, or are they looking at burning in the front end and then?
To my knowledge, no. So again, it would depend. So from what I understood, it would remain at 4% because that's what's coded in. If we wanted to change that, that would go through referendum. Okay. I've heard that people want to raise the inflation rate. I've heard that people want to lower it. Like we've got, nothing's concrete yet because again, we don't have that referendum tool. So we need that referendum tool in order to be able to determine where do we want to go next in terms of inflation, because it's such a hot topic. Yeah. I don't think that that's something that the block producers are going to make a unilateral decision on. It's just, it's too big of a decision to make.
For sure. What, how far along is the referendum at this point?
Pretty much done, and I say that very lightly. So heavy end-to-end system, testing is currently going on. The vote tally tool is being finalized. That was the last kind of part of it. The UI is pretty much done. So if you can go check it out at eosvotes.io. But again, even when it's done, and once we kind of have that finalized, it's never done, because then the next step is, which questions are going to go up for referendum? How are they going to be posed? How can we ensure that there's not 1,000 different questions being posed and 50 of them perhaps are all about the same subject? So you as a token holder have the facility, or how can it be easier for you to be able to go and participate? Because one of the issues that we have when Mainnet launched was the lack of a proper voting tool and or wallet. And we saw that what that did, voter participation was really low. And now we're starting to have tools. What the referendum team wanted to ensure, they started off by, let's do an MVP. But then the scope of what's an MVP changed over time, because, well, it needs to be an MVP, but at the same time, it needs to be good from the beginning, because it's too hard for token holders to participate. We're just going to have voter apathy. And that education part is really long. And we do need this. Like, the community needs a voice, but we need to be able to facilitate that process so it's easier to do. So the UX portion of it is really, really important. I think that that's where the next challenge is. And I don't think that that's resolved right now.
Yeah.
So it'll be out, but then how to use it is still going to be a challenge.
Yes, that will be a challenge. And I mean, there's so many, I mean, what a challenge to overcome all the different angles there. I mean, even just that multiple questions you talk about. And then if you have like these questions, the reason you can't just have one person pick like, okay, the best question that sums this up is because depending on how questions are worded really suits the way that it's voted. So
of course,
you know, just that one person, that's almost a centralization. If you have one person like, oh, this is the best question out of these 50. So it's a very, very, quite a problem that they're tackling. So,
yeah, in London, we had an unconference, like I was saying, and that was one of the big topics of discussion, was that we need to find a balance between, there was a system that was proposed that basically questions would go up to block producers, and the block producers would filter out and determine which ones, potentially like 15 out of 21, would determine which ones would be posed on the referendum tool itself. The problem with that is the centralization, right? So then the block producers are able to effectively determine, like you said, how questions are being posed, and it will definitely affect how people will vote. So we need to find a balance between having a free-for-all where it's just too many questions and it's crazy, and you as a token holder are either going to find it too difficult, you're just not going to vote, or you're going to vote for something while I vote for something else, and both of them really are asking the same thing, but we're never going to reach our threshold because we're voting on two different questions. So that medium between the complete free-for-all and centralization is where right now we still haven't figured out. And another thing that's important as well is who gets to vote. So it's fairly obvious at this point, people are pretty much on board that you can only vote if your tokens are staked. That's not hard, but can you vote if your tokens are staked on an exchange? Can the exchanges vote for referendum questions. And that was another hot topic. Because then it goes back to the same thing with voting right now. We get into that circle of, well, then exchanges hold the majority of the tokens, and so can they sway and can they determine effectively what gets voted in and out if the thresholds are the same as the current block producer voting? Then yeah, we'll see kind of a similar system. So again, those are all questions that are not necessarily the tool itself, but how to use the tool after it's out.
Yeah. That's one of the amazing things about how early we are in this blockchain is every little step has these deep, long thought out, all this game theory to it. That, just takes an immense amount of effort to put something through that's makes sense logically and that fits with incentives. And it's just, I feel like my mind is constantly just like in overdrive, just working. I like it. It
definitely keeps me up at night. It definitely gives me a reason to wake up in the morning and a reason to stay up late at night.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on, but I think that's the magical part of what we're a part of, is we're able to affect change very early on. This kind of dream that we all have of what EOS is going to be. We might have different ways of getting where we want to go, but in the end, most people that I talk to all want EOS to succeed. So there's just so much work to do, so little time. We're very impatient, and that's why I try to remind myself. And that was part of my speech when I was in Seoul. One of the panels was, we need to kind of tone it down and really become a little bit more patient, because it's famously said that you overestimate what you can do in a year, but you underestimate what you can do in 5. And we're always so impatient, and this is where we are right now because we want this to work out, but we just need to slow it down.
Yeah, we're very ambitious, and if of course barely 4 months into, almost 4 months into the the main net, and we're and expecting big things, and there's huge things happening. I mean, it's so I mean, what a time to be a part of EOS. It's
of course, and we need to keep expecting big things, right?
For sure.
We like that passion and that drive, that energy that we have right now. That's what's making EOS the best blockchain, and that's what will help make EOS the best blockchain there is that energy and that passion. So we need to keep it going.
Yeah, and I mean, with EOS, there's this massive amount of people who are thinking globally, like on a huge, massive, 10 times bigger scale than most blockchains, and like there's this. I think there's a lot of positive energy going into building this. It's a ton of momentum right now.
For
so
sure.
It feels good to be kind of pushing it forward. It's so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. So as far as anything we might have kind of glossed over with EOS Nation, or anything you'd like to touch on that we might have not given enough time to?
Main thing, I guess, is just come and participate. Again, this is a topic of discussion that always comes back. The great thing about EOS is that people are able to design and direct where they want EOS to go by just showing up. So just show up, participate. Like this is a truly decentralized system. Things move forward and things get done and they get developed because people show up. They have opinions, they have ideas, they've got skill sets, and they put them to work. And so if I have one call to action, is just do it. Just show up. You have the opportunity. EOS is relatively small, and you still have that possibility. Give it a couple of years, and it won't be as easy, I think, as it is right now. So if you've got something that you think is useful, show up, participate, talk. In Telegram, I know that for us, for EOS Nation, like come on our Facebook group, come on Telegram, read our Medium articles, come and hit us up at whatever event that we're doing live. We're doing a lot of meetups. Just come and participate. And through our Ambassador Nation program, we really give a voice to people that really want to spend time. So the level of engagement that you want to give can also be tailored in EOS, whether it's just, participating in Telegram channels, whether it's doing videos like you do on YouTube, it's doing an AMA, it's participating on the AMA that we do weekly, or it's really getting involved and starting to help for things like WPS that's just made up of community members, as well as block producers and other stakeholders. do what you want and just participate. There is room for everybody.
Yes, there is. There's room for everyone. It's so early. Cool. Well, I will post the links for EOS Nation and for your Telegram and your Medium, and I'll post those links so people you can find, and the ambassador program you'll be able to find in the show notes or on the website, I'm sure. And
for sure.
And then this is the EOS podcast. This is my new pet project. I've been doing, I started focusing on EOS prior to mainnet launch because I loved Steemit. And so I got into EOS. Mm-hmm. I want to be like kind of get deep into it early. And so the EOS podcast, this is kind of where it's all led to. And this is my new baby. So I'm loving chatting with people. It's fun to hear from, people like you that are block producers doing big things. So
awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Brendan, for sure. And thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are signing off. Cheers, my EOS friends, and we'll catch you next time on the EOS podcast. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is.